Welcome to StatLab StatCrunch videos. Today we're looking at t-distributions. Before I go ahead and jump into the problem, I want to just recap when we use the t-distribution. 1. When you have a small sample size, which is less than 30. 2. When your standard deviation of the population is unknown. 3. And when the distribution is approximated to a normal distribution. These are the 3 conditions you have to know as to when you use your t-distribution. Having said that, jumping right into the problem, because it's a t-distribution, I go to Stats, Calculators, T-Calculator. The only 2 things you have to enter is your degrees of freedom and your area under the curve. But before you do that, you have to make sure you are in between. Okay, so degrees of freedom is nothing but your sample size minus 1. So 26 minus 1 is 25. So your degrees of freedom is n minus 1. I'm going to go ahead and put that. My degrees of freedom is 26 minus 1, which is 25. And the area under the curve, which is my critical value, which is 80%. I'm going to go ahead and put that here, 0.8, and compute. And if you look at the critical values, they match. Okay? All right, moving on to problem number 3. They're asking me to find the margin of error, which is TCS over square root of n. TC, my step 1 is to calculate my TC, which is the critical value. S, I have right here, which is the sample standard deviation. N, I have right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and find TC first. To find TC, where do I go? Critical value, Stats, Calculators. Let me go ahead and show that to you one more time. Stats, Calculators, T-Calculator, always between. I'm going to go ahead and plug in my degrees of freedom, which is 29 minus 1. And that would be 28. And the next one is the area, which goes right here, which is 0.8, and compute. So my TC is 1.31. You always take the positive value. The formula is TC S square root of n. I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. 1.31. Standard deviation is 5 times 5 square root of 29, and that should give you 1.2. Okay, all right, moving on to problem number 5. In problem number 5, they say in a random sample of 4 mobile devices, so my sample size is 4, for a mean repair cost 80. I'm going to go ahead and underline what all I know. Sample size of 4, the mean is 80, and deviation, standard deviation is 12.50. Remember, they're talking about standard deviation of the sample, not the population. And they're asking us to find the confidence intervals with the margin of the confidence percentage 99%. So let me go ahead and open my, oops, I have to turn this off. So I'm going to go with Stats. Remember, when you find confidence intervals, you go to T-Stats, 1 sample, and this is summary. Because they already gave me the mean and the standard deviation, which are the summary of my data, I'm going to go ahead and use summary. So the mean goes in the mean place. Mean is right here. Standard deviation goes right here. And sample size 4 goes right here. Make sure your confidence intervals match to 99. Now let's go ahead and do that. Sample size is 80. Oops, I put a 5. 80. Standard deviation 12.5. Sample size 4. Confidence interval is 99. And all I have to do is compute. Once I compute that, I will have my lower limit and my, oops, let me erase that. You couldn't see the values. I will have my lower limit. Can you see the 116 here? Okay. And the upper limit. So the lower limit goes right here. Upper limit goes right there. Okay. And now they're asking us for margin of error. So there are two ways of doing it. Either you can lower limit minus upper limit divided by 2. You can go ahead and do the margin of error that way. So I'm simply going to go ahead and subtract upper limit 0.51 minus lower limit 43.49 divided by 2, and that should give me 36.51. Okay? Alright, now moving on to problem number 8. The following data represents the concentration of dissolved organic carbon collected from 20 samples of organic soil. Assume the population is normally distributed. Complete part A through 6. The question here is, they gave me the raw data. If you observe, they did not give me the mean or the standard deviation of the data. They gave me the data itself. So what I should do is go ahead and open my data in StatCrunch. The first thing they're asking me is to find the mean and standard deviation. Stats, summary stats, columns. I click the mean, control, and standard deviation. And if you see that your mean is right here and your standard deviation is right here. Okay? Now the next step is to calculate the confidence intervals. Okay? So same thing, stats, T-stats. This is not summary with data. Okay? And I'm going to scroll down. What is my confidence interval here? Oh, both of them match. This is 95 and 95, so I don't have to change it. And all I have to do is compute. Once I have it, I am simply going to go ahead and show you. I do have my lower limit and I have my upper limit. All right? Perfect. Problem number, let's see, which one do I want to do? 10? No, 10 is for you all. Okay. Problem number 11. In problem number 11, they said use the standard normal distribution, or these are the kind of problems you should be expecting in the test, or T distribution. So they did not tell me which one to use. They asked me to pick which one to use with the confidence interval of 95. So let me go ahead and write down what I have. I have my confidence interval, which is 95%. Excuse my handwriting, my mouse is just not cooperating here. And I have, let's say, population standard deviation. Population standard deviation right here, 1.39. Okay, so it says in the recent use the standard deviation or T distribution. I have my confidence interval, justify your decision. And they said in a recent season the population standard deviation. So I do have my population standard deviation of population standard deviation of the yards per carry for all running backs was 1.39. Yards per carry for 25 random samples, so I do see 25 of them here. Assume the yards per carry are normally distributed. So I do have population standard distribution, and they did tell me that they're normally distributed. So the only option here I have is I have to use a normal distribution, which is Z distribution, because if I did not have my standard population standard deviation, then I would use a T. But because I have this, I'm simply going to go ahead and use my Z. So let's see how that's done. Open this in StatCrunch. Very good. Stats, Z-stats with my data. Gonna go ahead and click my data. It's in variable 1 if you see that. See, it's in variable, let me move this. It's in variable 1, so I click variable 1. And keep in mind, you have to plug in your population standard deviation. Even though it says optional here, make sure you plug in because there is a slight difference if you don't in your answers. So my population standard deviation is 1.39. Scrolling all the way down, confidence interval is 95 and compute. Once I have that, do you see my lower limit? And you see my upper limit. Okay? And then these questions vary depending on your problem, so you'll have to read every question and answer that. Hope that helps.